Hi, today we will learn how to draft a freelancing agreement. As you may already know, a freelancing agreement is a contract which is entered into between a client and an independent contractor, which is usually a freelancer, to define the terms of their working relationship. This agreement outlines the scope of work, the payment terms, the project timeline, and other important details to ensure clarity and protect both the parties' interests during the course of the project. Now, how do you draft this using Chat GPT? I'll show you. Now, to begin with, you will always have to give GPT a role and set of context for what we will be drafting. Let me show you my prompt. As you can see, my prompt says, act as a contract drafting lawyer, well versed with the Indian legal scenario and provisions, and draft a freelancing agreement for me. A freelancing agreement is a contract entered into between a client and an independent contractor to define the terms of their working relationship. And I will give you the facts in the next prompt. In the following prompt, I give it a fact situation. I'll guide you through it to clarify our drafting objective. Let's read through the fact situation. Patel is a skilled web developer who's based in Bangalore. He's been working as a freelancer for the past 3 years and specializing in creating responsive websites and web applications using modern technologies like React, Node, and MongoDB. Recently, Arab was contacted by Tech Solutions India Private Limited. They're a growing startup in Mumbai and they develop software solutions for small businesses. They are interested in hiring Arab as a freelance web developer to create a new e-commerce platform for one of their clients. The key details of their potential engagement are as follows: that the scope of the project is to develop a fully functional e-commerce website with user authentication, product catalog, shopping cart, so and so. So the project timeline is estimated to take 3 months to complete. Payment says that the Tech Solutions has provided a project-based payment and they will pay 5 lakh rupees with 30% upfront. And remainder will be split in 2 installments. Work arrangement says that Arav is going to work remotely, but he will be required to attend weekly virtual meetings. Then about the IP, it says Tech Solution wants to own all the IP to the final product. About confidentiality, we say that Arav will have access to sensitive client information and of course to Tech Solutions proprietary tools. For termination, we say that parties want flexibility to terminate the contract. And for future work, we say that there is a possibility of extending the contract for maintenance and updates once the initial project is completed. Finally, we say that Arav is excited about this opportunity and he wants to ensure his rights and interests are protected. He needs a comprehensive freelance agreement that covers all the aspects of the engagement and provides clarity on the terms and conditions. Now, once I tell GPT about my fact situation, I will also give it an additional prompt. I say, please draft a freelancing agreement on behalf of Arav, which clearly protect his rights and clearly laid out the obligation of both the parties. But first, ask me 10 questions that you need to be answered to draft this agreement and break them down into factual and legal questions. ChatGPT goes ahead and asks me questions divided into legal and factual. I have given the answers to the questions here in the document itself for your convenience. The first question is around dispute resolution. So it says, what is your preferred method of resolving disputes? So I say arbitration. When you should be Bangalore, which is cost effective. And we also say that the seat is also going to be at Bangalore. The language of arbitration is going to be English. We want a sole arbitrator for our proceedings, and disputes can be dealt with Karnataka courts. About the governing law, so we say it's going to be the Indian law and jurisdiction of courts will be Karnataka courts. Next question is around termination. What do you consider a reasonable notice for the period of termination? So we say 30-day notice period for termination. This gives sufficient time to both the parties. About liability limitations or specific limitations around liability that you would like to include. So I say we suggest capping Ara's liability at 50% of the total project fee. It will remit his financial risk while we're demonstrating commitment to the project as well. It further asks me about non-compete, non-solicitation. Would you like to include clauses preventing Ara from engaging with Tech Solutions client or competitors? So we say that we should include a 6-month non-solicitation clause, but no broad non-compete clause because this protects Tech Solutions' immediate interest without overly restricting Arab's future opportunities. We next come to the factual questions. So what are the upfront payment conditions? Are there any conditions tied to upfront payment of 30%? We say that 30% upfront payment should be made upon contract signing before any work begins. This ensures that Arav has resources to initiate the project. Then progress milestones. So how do you define the 2 installments after upfront payment? We say 30% upfront payment upon contract signing, 35% upon completion of front-end development and basic back-end functionality, and 35% upon full project completion after successful testing and client acceptance. About scope of future work, so anything about specific terms that you would like to include for potential future maintenance. For potential maintenance and updates, we suggest including a clause at an hourly rate of 3,000 rupees with minimum retainer of 10 hours for 6 months of post-project completion. So this way there will be a framework for continued engagement without overcommitting to either party. About communication and meetings. So, what is the frequency of meetings mode? We say it is going to be a video call Monday 10 a.m. and this will be emailed to him by 5 p.m. every Friday. And there will be a clear communication schedule about this. Finally, about expenses. So, are there any expected expenses that might occur that need to be reimbursed? So, we say any software license or tool specifically requested by tech solutions or which is necessary for proprietary development environment that should be reimbursed. General development tools are RF's responsibility. This is going to divide the expense between the two parties. Now, apart from me giving it a fact situation, setting a context and answering the questions, I also give it a prompt and I detail out the list of clauses that I want to be included in my freelancing agreement. Let me show you the list. I ask it to include scope of work, project timeline, payment terms, work arrangement, intellectual property rights, confidentiality, termination, dispute resolution, governing law, liability limitation, non solicitation, communication protocols, expenses and reimbursement, future maintenance updates, deliverables, quality standards, revisions, warranties, force majeure, indemnification, insuring, ownership of the tools, data protection, and finally amendments. So this is the specific list of clauses I asked GPT to incorporate in my draft. And based on this, I have received the first draft of my freelancing agreement. Let's have a look at it. As you can see, the title is perfect. It's a freelancing agreement. It's entered into by RF Patel, who is an independent contractor, who is called as Freelancer and Tech Solutions, which is a company registered under Indian laws, situated at Mumbai. Now, the recitals are given that Freelancer is a skilled web developer with expertise in creating responsive websites. And the client desires to engage the freelancer to provide certain web development services on a freelance basis under terms and conditions of the agreement and therefore this agreement. Let's see the first clause. So it says the scope of work, the freelancer shall develop a fully functional e-commerce website, something that I had told in my fact situation and my prompt, perfectly incorporated here, that freelancer shall develop a fully functional e-commerce website for the client, including user authentication, product catalog, shopping cart, payment integration, everything as detailed out in Annexure A. About the project timeline, so it says it will be completed within 3 months and milestones are outlined in Annexure B. Payment terms. So it says it's going to be 5 lakh rupees total payable, 30% upfront, 35% on completion of front-end development and basic back-end functionality, and the remainder upon full project completion. Now, keep in mind that we are drafting it for RF, and here GPT does not have any clause incorporated about late payments and interest on late payments. So we can ask GPT to incorporate that. And it further says that payment should be made within 7 business days of receiving the invoice. Now, and we're trying to make it from RF's end, we would like this period to be shortened. We'll give it in a prompt later. Work arrangement is fine. Monday meetings and email receipt on Friday is incorporated. About the intellectual property, it says all intellectual property shall be exclusively owned by the client upon full payment, and the freelancer agrees to assign and transfer all such rights. But here we can say that Arav has rights to his pre-existing work. Again, we're trying to draft it from his perspective. So we will change this clause. But confidentiality, it says freelancer shall keep all confidential information received from the client, including proprietary tools. Now you can see this is one-sided. We can make it a mutual obligation on both the parties. About termination, it says that either party may terminate within 30 days with a written notice. So my prompt is incorporated correctly. And it further says in the event of termination, freelancer shall be compensated for the work completed up to the termination date. But how will we actually calculate the partial work completed? We can have some clarity here. So I would like to amend this clause. About dispute resolution, so it says that it will be resolved in Mumbai. That is not my prompt. I had said that the seat and venue will be Bangalore. We want to resolve it through arbitration with a sole arbitrator. Language should be English. All of these prompts are missing. So I would like GPT to expand upon this. Governing laws fine, limitation liability. So here it says that the freelancer's liability under this arrangement shall be limited to total number of fees paid by the client. However, here, if we mention a specific amount, it will protect Arav's interest later so that an unjustified claim is not made against him. My prompt in regard to non-solicitation for 6 months is picked up, communication protocol is picked up, expenses and reimbursements has been drafted properly. Then it says, then about future maintenance and updates, it says, the maintenance and updates post-project completion, the freelancer shall be engaged on an hourly rate of 3,000 with a minimum monthly retainer of 10 hours for 6 months. Now, in this clause, I would like to make it more flexible, so I will amend this in my prompt later. About deliverables, quality standards, things are picked up correctly. About revision and acceptance. In this, if you see, it says the client shall have a right to request revisions within 10 days of deliverable submissions. A 10 days is a long time period. I would ideally want to shorten it, so I will revise this. Warranties are fine. Then in the force majeure clause, it says neither party shall be liable for delays due to force majeure events, but it does not talk about termination event or in event of force majeure. So I would like to include that. In the indemnification clause, it is put entire liability on the freelancer. We would like to make it on both sides. So again, there will be a change. Subcontracting is not allowed with the client's consent. Now, this is a blanket prohibition which is casted on Arav. We're drafting it from his end, so we would like more flexibility here. For the clauses about ownership, data protection, and amendments, they're taken up correctly. So all the issues that I just spoke to you about while going through the first draft, I have identified those and I have specified GPT to make necessary changes in that agreement itself. Let's look at my prompt. I say the payment schedule should be more favorable to Arav. There's no mention of interest or late payments, and 70 payment could be shortened to make quicker payments. Then the clause transfer all IP rights to the client upon full payment, and Arav should get to retain rights to his pre-existing and generic components. Then in confidentiality, we say that these are one-sided, so make it mutual. Then we talk about early termination, that we need to protect Arav's interests. So what in case there is early termination? Then here, if you see, the arbitration was put up in Mumbai. We said that it was preferable to have it in Bangalore, which is a neutral location. Then we talk about a claim that may happen in the future. So we say that make it a fixed amount. Then we talk about a 10-day revision being too long, so a shorter period required there. Then we talk about termination and force majeure. Further, we talk about indemnification, that this may expose RF to a significant risk, so it could be more balanced there. And subcontracting would limit his flexibility. So a clause allowing limited subcontracting for non-core tasks would be more favorable. And keeping these amendments in mind, I ask GPT to retain the earlier draft and make these changes. And based on this, I have received a final freelancing agreement. Let me take you through the draft. Okay, this is a freelancing agreement between RF Patel and Tech Solutions. The recitals were perfect earlier as well. The scope of work was perfect. Project timeline was correctly incorporated. Now, with the payment terms, if you see, had asked it to incorporate interest for late payment, that to shorten the time period to release the payments for the invoice. So it has incorporated it correctly here. It says payments will be made within 3 business days of receiving the corresponding invoice. The late payment interest would be 1.5% per month for any overdue amounts. Now, this makes it in favor of RF. Then, in case there is an early termination, the freelancer shall be compensated for the project for the work that is completed and related deliverables which were missing earlier. And if you see this in red, this is a manual edit that I have made, that the client should bear all bank transfer fees and charges related to payments to the freelancer. This is something that was missing and I have added it manually. Work arrangement is fine. IP rights, if you see, GPT has added that the freelancer shall retain ownership of all pre-existing work, generic components, libraries, tools, etc. used for the final deliverable. And clients shall be granted a non-exclusive, non-transferable license to use these components. This is fine. Confidentiality. Here, if you see, it has gone ahead and made a mutual obligation that both parties agree to keep sensitive data confidential and they will not disclose it to third parties without, of course, the consent of another. In the termination clause, a force majeure clause has been added that if there is a termination due to force majeure event, either party can terminate this within 15 days of notice. So something picked up. Then the dispute resolution clause, it is picked up and said that it will be resolved to arbitration and court said Bangalore will have jurisdiction. We have given a note for you all that jurisdiction actually typically resides with the paying party. right? And in real world situations, this will be open to negotiation between the parties, of course. However, since here in this agreement, we're drafting it for RF, our aim is to safeguard his interest. Then, in limitation of liability, we have limited the liability to 50% of total fees paid or 2,50,000, whichever is lower. Then, other clauses seem fine. I don't need any changes there. In the indemnification clause, if you see, both party now are indemnifying each other, which was absent in the first draft. So, it is picked up by revision. I've made a few changes in the insurance clause. I just say that the freelancer shall maintain appropriate insurance coverage as required under the applicable laws. In subcontracting, now if you see the change has been incorporated that the freelancer may subcontract non-core tasks without prior consent, provided that the freelancer remains fully responsible. Now, this gives flexibility to our client. Other clauses here done correctly, so no change there. However, I've added a few clauses of severability, entirety of agreement, and counterparts. This I have done manually, and therefore it appears in red color. And finally, it's going to be signed by Mr. Arav and the authorized signatory of Tech Solutions. But as a drafting assistant, and of course, applying my legal expertise, I created this tailored contract to effectively protect the interest of my client rights. Without specific legal knowledge, GPT alone would have just produced a generic document that inadequately safeguards my client interest. And that is something that I don't want. Now, if you are interested in learning these advanced contract drafting techniques, you should join our 3-day online, free, and live bootcamp that is happening on 14th, 15th, and 17th of September 2024. They will be teaching you such amazing skills, and you can also use AI to draft such contracts. So what are you waiting for? Mark your calendar right now because recordings are not going to be available as it's a live event. I will definitely see you there, and I'm signing off.